Volcanic explosive eruption of the Pinatubo Volcano. Most people are familiar with Pinatubo from its VEI-6 eruption on June 15, 1991, which was the second largest terrestrial eruption of the 20th century after Alaska's Novarupta in 1912. Typhoon Yunya's arrival, which brought a deadly combination of ash and rain to the villages and cities near the volcano, complicated the eruption. The dangers of the eruption were permanently imprinted in the hearts of the people of Luzon Philippines, and they won't be quickly forgotten. But what were actually these hazards? Watch this video to the end to know more about the volcanic explosive eruption of the Pinatubo Volcano. 1991 Mount Pinatubo Eruption. The Luzon Volcanic Arc in the Philippines' Mount Pinatubo explosion in 1991 was the second largest volcanic eruption of the 20th century, behind Alaska's Novarupta eruption in 1912. On April 2nd, phreatic explosions from a crack that developed on Mount Pinatubo's north flank signaled the start of eruptive activity. After being installed, seismographs started keeping an eye on the volcano for earthquakes. The frequency of seismic activity under the volcano varied day by day in late May. A series of shallow earthquakes that started on June 6th and were followed by an inflationary tilt on the mountain's upper east face resulted in the extrusion of a tiny lava dome. The volcano's first dramatic eruption, which occurred on June 12th, sent an ash column 19 kilometers into the sky. On June 13, there were further explosions that night and the next morning. During this time, seismic activity increased significantly. On June 15, an even more strongly gas-charged magma came to the volcano's surface. It erupted, creating an ash cloud that rose 40 kilometers into the sky. Pumice and volcanic ash covered the landscape. Massive pyroclastic flows rushed down Pinatubo's sides, covering once deep valleys with 200-meter thick new volcanic deposits. The volcano's peak fell during the eruption, creating a tiny crater that is 2.5 kilometers broad and removed so much rock and magma from the volcano's base. Satellites watched the ash cloud as it circled the globe many times, and fine ash from the eruption landed as far away as the Indian Ocean. At least 16 commercial aircraft unintentionally passed into the spreading ash cloud, causing damage worth $100 million. Darkness and the noises of lahars thundering through surrounding river valleys accompanied the ashfall. A number of smaller lahars swept across the Clark air site, crashing into structures and scattering vehicles as they flowed through the base in very strong sheets. Within 30 kilometers of Mount Pinatubo, almost every bridge was damaged. A number of lowland communities were submerged in water or mud. The collapse of roofs beneath moist, heavy ash resulted in more than 840 fatalities and many injuries. Over the following years, rain continued to pose risks as the volcanic deposits were remobilized into subsequent mudflows. Following each big downpour, damage to bridges, irrigation canal systems, roadways, agriculture, and urban areas occurred. Rain-induced lahars had a significantly larger and longer-lasting impact on humans than the eruption itself. Accumulating and evacuating. The 7.7 magnitude earthquake rocked the Cordilleras and northern central Luzon on July 16, 1990. Compared to the 1906 San Francisco earthquake and the 2008 Sichuan earthquake, this was the greatest earthquake ever recorded in 1990. Its epicenter was in the Nueva Ecija municipality of Rizal, approximately 100 kilometers northeast of Pinatubo, and the fault ran across 3 provinces, from northwest to southeast. Volcanologists suspect that it may have eventually caused the 1991 eruption, but it is hard to verify convincingly. It also followed the Philippine fault system west, as far as Baguio, which was damaged, and is situated approximately 80 kilometers north-northeast of Pinatubo. Residents in the area claimed to have seen steam pouring from the volcano 2 weeks after the earthquake, but when scientists went there in response, they only discovered minor rock slides, not any indication of pre-eruptive activity. Villagers on the volcano's northwest flank felt a series of tremors on March 15, 1991. Over the next 2 weeks, further earthquakes of increasing magnitude were felt, and it became apparent that some kind of volcanic activity was probable. Phreatic eruptions started on April 2nd at the volcano's peak along a 1.5 kilometer long fissure. Small eruptions persisted over the next several weeks, covering the neighborhood with volcanic ash. Every day, hundreds of minor earthquakes were detected by seismographs. As soon as possible, scientists set up monitoring tools and examined the volcano to look for signs of its prior eruptions. Charcoal discovered in ancient volcanic layers that underwent radiocarbon testing indicated the last 3 big explosive eruption events in recent millennia, which occurred about 5,500, 3,500 and 500 years ago. According to geological mapping, the adjacent plains were mostly created by lahar flood deposits from earlier eruptions. In May, there was an uptick in volcanic activity. Sulfur dioxide emissions were measured, and it was discovered that they quickly increased from 500 T per day on May 13 to 5,000 T per day on May 28. This suggested that underneath the volcano, there was a growing column of new magma. After May 28th, there was a sharp decline in SO2 emissions, which fed to worries that the magma's ability to expel gas had been hindered in some way, increasing the risk of explosive eruptions with great force. Tilt meter observations from the beginning of June had shown that the volcano was steadily expanding, clearly as a result of rapidly increasing volumes of magma entering the reservoir under the summit. A few kilometers northwest of the top, where seismic activity had previously been focused, moved to shallow depths just below the summit at the same time. An incident like this occurs before volcanic tectonic earthquakes. Increase in eruption. View of Mount Pinatubo's main eruption as seen from Clark Air Base on June 15, 1991. The climactic phase of June 15-16 lasted for more than 15 hours, produced massive pyroclastic flows, ejected tephras up to 35 kilometers into the sky, and formed a caldera in the area that had been the summit. The 36-hour period of darkness was thereafter called Black Saturday. On June 12th, a minor explosion signaled the start of a brand new, more active phase of the eruption. A few hours later on the same day, powerful explosions lasting approximately 30 minutes produced huge eruption columns that rose fast to heights of about 19 kilometers and caused pyroclastic surges that reached up to 4 kilometers from the summit in certain river basins. A 15-minute outburst sent volcanic material to heights of 24 kilometers 14 hours later. Volcanic lightning was produced in large quantities by friction in the ascending ash column. On June 13, a third big eruption started after a 2-hour period of very frequent minor earthquakes. The eruption column once again reached 24 kilometers, and it lasted for nearly 5 minutes. After 3 hours of silence, seismic activity started, intensifying over the next 24 hours until on June 14, a 3-minute eruptive outburst formed a 21 kilometers high eruption column. Effects on aviation. The ash cloud, released by the eruption on June 15, destroyed at least 16 commercial airplanes while they were in the air, and other grounded aircraft also sustained substantial damage. As a result of in-flight collisions, one engine on each of the 2 airplanes lost power. 10 engines, including all 3 of one DC-10, were damaged and replaced. There have been reports of longer-term harm to engines and airplanes, including the buildup of sulfate deposits. The recently retired Vought F-8 fleet of the Philippine Air Force was also badly destroyed by the eruption, since it was being stored outside at Bassa Air Base. The eruption's explosiveness. Around 450 to 500 years had passed since the volcano's previous known eruption, when the 1991 eruption, which had a volcanic explosivity index rating of 6, occurred. The eruption, which was nearly 10 times greater than Mount St. Helens' 1980 explosion, released around 10 kilometers cubed of debris, making it the greatest eruption of the 20th century since Novarupta in 1912. Tephra fallout and pyroclastic flow deposits, which are far less dense than magma, are examples of ejected material. The amount of ejected material was comparable to around 4 cubic kilometers of material that had not yet erupted. A caldera 2.5 kilometers wide was created in place of the volcano's original peak. The peak of the caldera rim was now 1,485 meters above sea level, which is about 260 meters lower than the summit before the eruption. Death toll. According to reports, 847 people perished in the eruption, largely as a result of roofs falling under the weight of accumulated volcanic material, a risk that was exacerbated by Typhoon Yunya's simultaneous arrival. Tens of thousands of lives were undoubtedly spared during the evacuation in the days leading up to the eruption, which has been hailed as a major achievement for volcanology and eruption prediction. After the eruption, there are still roughly 500,000 people living within 40 kilometers of the volcano, with the largest population centers being Angeles City with 150,000 people and Clark Freeport Zone with 30,000 people. Ashes and smoke from Mount Pinatubo's 1991 eruption may have been the greatest eruption of the 20th century, since it included about twice as much material as the explosion of El Chichon volcano in 1982. In late August 1992, Pinatubo erupted once again, killing over 72 people. That's about it for this video. Thanks for watching. Please, your likes and subscriptions to our channel is one way we'll know you appreciate what we're doing. Please keep it coming. We'd also like to know about your thoughts and feelings over this volcanic experience. Feel free to drop your comments below in the box provided.